All right, thank you. Malcolm X, when he got up to speak places, he used to sometimes say, I see some friends and I even see some enemies, and I'm glad to say I only see friends here. Glad to see so many of you all here today. I've been asked to speak around the issue of disarmament and building bombs versus building houses and housing. And so I stand before you today to declare that instead of building bombs, we need to build housing. Affordable housing, yes. Affordable housing in good neighborhoods with well-funded schools, plenty of public park space, and street lights that come on when the sun goes down. See, I had the privilege of growing up in a neighborhood like that in the 80s and 90s in the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City. I lived on the 4th floor of a 12-story pre-war building, and for the younger folks here, pre-war meant pre-World War II. It was built in 1927, pre-World War II apartment building that sat on Riverside Drive and looked out over the Hudson River. I could come out the front door of the apartment building and walk across the street to the Riverside Park. I would go down there and play Little League and spent countless hours over the years that I grew up. And what you need to know is that I was raised by a single mother who taught elementary school-age children in the New York City public schools for over 35 years. And she raised me and my older sister with little to no help from either of our fathers, and without the kind of resources that would have allowed her to stay in a neighborhood like that if it wasn't for this ingenious invention called rent regulations. Rent regulations. My mother moved into the 4th floor of that apartment building in the late 1960s, and she is still there to this day in that same apartment. In New York City, there are 2 categories of rent-regulated apartments. Some are in the category of rent-controlled, which means that whatever the rent is when you move into that apartment building is what the rent is today and forever. And those that are rent-stabilized, which means the rent can only go up by small and modest increments every year. That apartment has been rent-stabilized that she has lived in since the late 1960s. Now, unlike what I will call, I hope it doesn't offend anybody, the tragic failure of the renter coalitions here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the 1990s to keep rent regulations from being lifted in the Commonwealth. In New York City, those renter coalitions are strong, and they protect what is becoming an increasingly modest supply of rent-regulated apartments that remain as tenants die out and there is no family member to assume their lease. Because in New York City, there is a thing called secession, and you can secede your family member's lease to a rent-controlled or rent-stabilized apartments. What I'm here to tell you today is that I am of the belief that it is time for Boston, time for Cambridge, and time for every other economically diverse community in this area and in this country to get serious about building affordable housing, protecting affordable housing, and making it possible for every young kid, no matter how marginal their circumstances, to grow up like I did in a good neighborhood with well-funded schools, plenty of public park space, and lights that come on at night on the streets. As a matter of moral justice, those communities should not be limited to the white, to the wealthy, to the privileged, or to the rich. And at this stage of the game, what I have referred to as the final stages of gentrification in a place like Cambridge, that is who they are limited to: the white, the wealthy, the privileged, and the rich. The reality is that well-funded public schools bring opportunity. Public park spaces bring activities and fond memories. And street lights that come on when the sun goes down offer safety and security and stability in neighborhoods. So affordable housing is really about more than giving a man a home, as Ben Harper sings. It is about opportunity, it is about the possibility for equality, and it is about providing everyone with a chance to flourish in life, as the ethicists like to say. And so we have to get serious about articulating this wider vision for why affordable housing is a moral imperative, a moral issue, not a partisan issue, not a Republican or Democrat, a right or left issue, but a moral issue. And we need to get serious about executing that vision by, as Malcolm X would say, whatever means are necessary in order to get it done. We've got to stop fooling around trying to negotiate with developers for a few more units here and a few more units there in the buildings that they put up to make a killing when they start charging $1,500 a month for 800 square feet that I could turn around in twice, maybe. We've got to stop fooling around trying to leverage community benefits agreement money that somehow seems to have a hard time making a real dent in the issue. An abundant supply of affordable housing is not something that we should be asking for as a favor, but instead demanding as a right for all Americans, native-born or otherwise. And so while Trump rattles sabers with his alter ego in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, we need to be insisting on keeping our priorities straight here at home. It is time to build housing and not bombs. It is time to make my reality, my childhood on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in a neighborhood with well-funded public schools and plenty of public park space and street lights that came on at night. It is time to make my childhood and my reality not the exception for people who aren't white, rich, privileged, or wealthy, but the norm for every child in this country, in every community, in every neighborhood around America. Thank you.